I used to believe that justice worked like an equation, a neat, predictable process. Input truth, output fairness. It was a comforting thought, a data analyst's fantasy. That illusion lasted until the morning the city called me a criminal. My name is Avery Cole, and before last year I worked at a mid-level analytics firm in Denver called Verimetrics. I was the kind of person who loved spreadsheets the way others loved dogs. I found beauty in clean logic, the way truth hides in the patterns people ignore. So when a friend from the community board told me the city's public expenditure data was unavailable pending security audit, I did what any data geek would do. I pulled the historical data sets from the Wayback Machine, reformatted them, and posted the corruption gaps online. That post changed my life, and nearly ended it. The arrest. When they came for me, it was raining, because of course it was. 2 officers wearing the smug look of people following orders knocked on my apartment door and said I was being charged with data theft. Data theft. For uncovering numbers that already existed. They seized my laptop but left my cat, which was probably merciful. I told myself it was a bureaucratic misunderstanding, but 3 days later, watching the prosecution's pre-trial report, I realized the real misunderstanding was mine. They knew it was absurd. They just didn't care. That's when I met my public defender, Mr. Wiggins, a man whose tie looked like it had survived several divorces. He smiled apologetically. "Let's just wait for an offer," he said. An offer? A plea deal. They might reduce it to misdemeanor misuse of digital property. I stared at him like he'd just suggested confessing to stealing oxygen. I didn't do anything illegal. His shrug said everything. Truth was expensive. Negotiation was cheap. The discovery of silence. That night in jail, I lay awake listening to the hum of fluorescent lights and the quiet despair of people who had learned how the system really worked. I started reading anything I could get my hands on. Case briefs, civil codes, even disbarment warnings taped on the wall. Over time, I pieced together a realization that both terrified and fueled me. Most people didn't lose their cases because they were guilty. They lost because they couldn't afford to be right. When I was released on bail, I began haunting the courthouse like a specter with Wi-Fi. I sat in the corridors pretending to wait for someone while listening to defense lawyers barter with the prosecution. "Let's skip the hearing and take the deal. He can't afford discovery. Just accept probation." It was horrifying. The whole system ran on exhaustion and compromise. That's when I built the legal justification form, the idea that would one day turn me from defendant to accidental legend. The legal justification form. It was simple, like a bad joke pretending to be serious. The top half had true-false questions aimed at officials. True or false? Accessing publicly listed data constitutes theft. True or false? Transparency laws apply equally to officials and civilians. The bottom half was an essay section. Explain, with reference to legal precedent, how a citizen can be guilty for exposing information the city publicly released. I attached it to my pre-trial motion. They thought it was satire. The clerk smirked. The prosecutor rolled his eyes. The judge allowed it, for the record. In that moment, I realized something the system didn't want me to know. Ridicule was the first stage of reform. Courtroom chaos. On the first hearing date, I arrived in a crisp thrift store blazer and jittery confidence. Prosecutor Marson stood up, talking about data integrity breaches as though I'd hacked a Pentagon server. When it was my turn, I asked permission to display Exhibit B, my flowchart showing every single data point they'd accused me of stealing existed freely online, archived by the National Open Data Portal. "You're saying your own evidence proves I didn't access anything unlawfully?" I said. The courtroom murmured. Judge Vance squinted. The prosecutor fumbled, sweating through his suit. I could see the moment he realized he wasn't in control anymore. But the highlight? When I referenced Carpenter versus United States, 2018, and Riley versus California, 2014. I quoted the passages about digital privacy and public expectation of data access. I even cited a local government audit that contradicted their secrecy policy. One law student in the gallery actually whispered, "Damn." Vance cleared his throat. "Mr. Cole, are you a licensed attorney?" "No, Your Honor, just an attentive taxpayer." Unexpected allies. After that day, I became something like an urban myth within the courthouse halls. Janitors would nod, clerks whispered. Even a young assistant DA secretly left legal reference books at my chair before hearings. One night, I found a note under my door. "What you're doing matters. Don't back down." Someone who used to believe in this system. I never discovered who sent it, but it was all the fuel I needed. 6 months later, the prosecution folded. Their main digital evidence source, a third-party firm called CityGov Solutions, had quietly admitted its data tracking software was flawed. That revelation rendered their entire argument invalid. The case was dismissed with prejudice. Judge Vance said, not unkindly, "Mr. Cole, this court rarely encounters defendants who educate the bench. This city owes you transparency and, regrettably, an apology." I didn't get an apology, but I did get something better. Every major outlet picked up the story. Local man defeats city using logic. They called me a citizen hacker. I preferred data poet. The aftermath. I never went back to analytics. Instead, I built a free platform called Civic Mirror, where people could upload FOIA requests, drafts of pro se motions, or my infamous legal justification form, now expanded to 43 questions. Law students began adding footnotes. Some nights, I still replay that courtroom silence in my head. The second before a system used to winning realized it had to explain itself. Not to a lawyer, to a citizen. Final reflection. The truth is, I didn't defeat the system. I just made it look in the mirror. Justice shouldn't require a degree, a donor, or a loophole. It should only require one thing: the courage to learn how power justifies itself. That courage, I learned, can be taught. And once taught, it's contagious.